Hello, friends. Have you ever experienced strange physical abnormalities and discomforts after going through a stressful and traumatic period of your life in a relationship with someone who is toxic or narcissistic? If you have, this video is for you. One of the most surprising and unexpected things that we can experience as a result of a very challenging relationship is disease, physical maladies, very strange symptoms that can happen in our bodies that seem weird. And it seems almost ridiculous to attribute it to a relationship or something that we're going through that's not, obviously directly affecting us physically. However, there are many studies out there that are starting to show that this is definitely the case. It was true for me in my experience, and I had a lot of questions around it. And I started tracking it, making note of the things that I was experiencing, and obviously in my emotional state and in my body, my physical being as well. And as I've researched further into healing from this kind of abuse, I've learned so much about the physical impacts that going through such a scenario can have on you. Learning more about how CPTSD, complex trauma, long-term exposure to advantageous and narcissistic people can affect one's physical health really helped me to acknowledge and validate and also take measures to heal from the things that I was experiencing. So if you've been through this kind of thing and you're starting to feel like you're physically falling apart and you don't know what's going on, this video is for you. The physical symptoms of narcissistic abuse include adrenal overload and panic attacks. You are highly likely to experience acute anxiety and adrenal overload during times where you are exposed to a narcissistic individual. And this is especially true during the devaluation and the discard phase. So usually these people are going to wait until the discard phase to engage in overt betrayal and overtly abusive behavior. And this is extremely confusing and taxing on your nervous system, and it's when your adrenals can get overloaded. It is at this time that your entire grasp on reality comes into question. The person that you thought you knew and loved has completely changed their character. And betrayal trauma literally rips away any feeling of safety. Another symptom is anxiety and depression. So as you experience the common highs and lows that one does with a narcissist or a toxic person, a part of you is always on guard and waiting for their reactivity. And this causes a baseline of consistent anxiety. Depression is also, unfortunately, very normal in these relationships as your self-esteem, your sense of reality, and your sense of healthy relating, and even your outlook on the world at large gets slowly and painfully dismantled. A lot of people end up isolated by the narcissists in their lives. They will lose contact with friends and relatives and other people who support them. They'll lose touch with things and hobbies and places that they love that brought them a lot of joy. And in this kind of disconnect and feeling terrible about oneself, as one does when you're continuously gaslit and told horrible things about yourself. Depression is a natural result from these circumstances. Another one is eating disorders and digestive issues. A person may develop an eating disorder in order to please a narcissist, in order to gain favor, to be a certain weight, or just due to anxiety, one might lose an appetite and have a hard time eating. Weight gain is also common when cortisol levels are running high through the system, and subconsciously, a person might be trying to protect themselves from a narcissist's emotional blows. There have been a couple times in my life where I was kind of stuck in situations with people who were really toxic, and I ended up putting on about 10 to 15 pounds and realized that it was definitely a protective mechanism. A person's appetite can go either way. You can completely lose your interest in food and have a hard time eating because of all of the stress and anxiety, or a person might turn towards food for comfort if they are prone to emotional eating. Another thing to note is that adrenaline and cortisol over time can start to be corrosive to your organs and your intestinal lining. This can cause leaky gut or a number of other digestive issues. Adrenal burnout and fatigue. So, after the relationship is over, or even during longer break periods where there's more space between you and this person, you might feel exhausted. You might want to sleep all the time. You might feel like you can't get enough sleep. You might not have the energy for anything, especially creative endeavors. Your body uses sleep and rest in order to repair itself, and it's going to need a lot of that, especially after your organs and your nerves and your entire system has been consistently flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. Again, that actually does damage to the tissues in your body, and your body will want to sleep and completely shut down in order to repair and renew your cells. The same thing happens with your brain. Like if you've gone through betrayal trauma, consistent long-term abuse actually causes damage to the gray matter of your brain. And so your body will, once you are in a safe space, what your body will do is say, we're safe now, we need to go into rest and repair mode. So what happens is that it wants to shut down, it wants you to sleep and rest so it can get better. Same thing as when you're sick. You want to stay in bed so you can heal, so you can fight off the infection. This is very similar. So if you find yourself completely exhausted and you don't have the energy for anything and you wonder what is wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with you. This is just one of those unfortunate but common and completely normal symptoms of post-narcissistic abuse. Another physical symptom that you're probably going to experience is brain fog. Now, this happens for a couple different reasons. It's probably happened often during your experience with this person when the abuse is happening. We go into psychological freeze states. I remember experiencing this frequently when during moments of gaslighting, during moments of being yelled at, when the Mr. Hyde persona comes out. During these moments when we are experiencing that kind of abuse, our brains literally can't comprehend what's going on. And that's part of the narcissistic tactic to, confuse the target so much that you lose grip on reality and you kind of become unhinged and a little bit crazy or unable to advocate for yourself and what you're actually experiencing. So that causes a deep freeze in the brain in the moment, and then over time, your psyche doesn't know what to do with all of this information. Like you slowly become more and more like unhinged and broken down. Another reason we experience brain fog is due to the physiological experience of having hormonal imbalances due to abuse trauma. So, that adrenaline and the cortisol and the imbalance of hormones that are flooding through our system, they can wreak havoc on us. And like I said earlier, they affect our digestion. They actually start to create autoimmune disorders. I'll talk about that in a second. And those things, like when your digestion is being eroded, when your organs are starting to take a toll, things start actually happening in your blood and your brain, and you can't actually think clearly anymore. So brain fog can actually be a long-term experience that can last, even a year or two after you've come out of abuse. And I know you don't want to hear these things, but I say this so if you are experiencing it, then you know that, you're not going crazy. This is something that definitely happens. Narcissistic abuse can create autoimmune disorders and symptoms. And if you're not digesting your food properly, if you've got these physical markers going on, brain fog is definitely one that lasts a long time. So yeah, autoimmune issues are also physical symptoms of this kind of life experience. And it is now being proven that long-term exposure to narcissistic abuse, especially for women, will increase your likelihood of experiencing or developing autoimmune disorders. And some of the symptoms include inflammation, brain fog, weight gain, depression, anxiety, food sensitivity, rashes, aching joints, problems in the connective tissue, fatigue, and general malaise are all associated with autoimmune disorders. Autoimmune disorders in relationship to narcissistic abuse, they happen for a reason. And this is something that I discovered myself within my internal inquiry. And a couple years later, I started to see more research that had come out around this topic. And I'm glad that it's becoming more mainstream. But here's what happens. Anger is our emotional protection against outside attack and violation. And as you know, in a narcissistic relationship, that person will train you to use your anger response against yourself. I'm sure you can think of plenty of times where you felt crossed or there was an abuse that happened and you tried to say something about it. You probably tried to say it really, really nicely because you didn't want to set them off. But even then, your rightful response to someone treating you that way was turned against you. And you probably ended up apologizing to them for it at the end of the conversation while you're sitting there stunned and in a freeze state. A narcissist will not let you feel angry for their abuses towards you. They won't take accountability for the harmful things that they say and do to you. So if you get angry, rightfully angry, all of a sudden you are the bad person and that comes back on you. So if you experience this often enough, time and time again, on an emotional level, at some point that pattern is going to take root in your physical body. And the reason that women experience more autoimmune disorders than men is because women are denied our anger as little girls. Like, boys are allowed to have anger, girls are not. And so after a lifetime of stuffing down anger in order to be polite, to be sweet, or be sad, or be funny, anything but angry, that actually starts to take a toll on our physical bodies. So during this time of understanding what was happening emotionally within me around my anger and watching the pattern of feeling it towards somebody else and then immediately putting it back on myself to swallow it, I was also noticing some physical things happening in my body that I'd never experienced before. At the end of my relationship, I ended up going through an extreme adrenal overload phase and then an extreme adrenal fatigue phase. I'd never experienced anything like that in my life before. It was wild. I did recently experience something kind of similar. It was more short term after the hurricane that came through Western North Carolina. That was an extreme trauma. It was wild to go through that big wave again. But at least I knew what I was dealing with this time. But yeah, narcissistic abuse is corrosive. not only to your mind and your emotions and your heart, but also to your body. It can do a lot of damage. So I want you to know this in case you are experiencing a lot of strange physical symptoms that are new and troublesome to you, that you can take a look at them and first of all be validated and acknowledge that you are experiencing these things and that some care is required here. One of the things that helped me tremendously during this time, it was a book that was referred to me by a friend. I'm not getting paid to show this to you guys, but I love it so much. It's this book. It's called The Adrenal Thyroid Revolution by Dr. Aviva Ram. And in it, she explains what happens whenever you are experiencing autoimmune dysfunction in your body. And she describes all the factors like diet, like stress, environmental toxins, and then there's this, it's like a 4-week program to like reset your system. And I will say that like even just the beginning chapters of it were I felt a lot of relief that what was going on inside of me was being explained, and that yeah, something can be done about it. But even if you look at the top here, it says like boost your energy, clear your brain fog, heal inflammation, and lose stubborn weight. Like all those things I was talking about earlier are all connected to this. And yeah, long-term exposure to narcissistic abuse, holy wow, like that can run a doozy on your body and make all of those things happen. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope that you get the support to heal and thrive and live your best life because you deserve it. All right, much love to you. I'll see you in the next one.